All right, how's that for big budget productions there, huh?
Lap base.
Welcome everybody to episode 25. We are this many, 25. We're 25 episodes old, and I am joined by
Scott Wilson, as always.
And I'm Steve Strobridge. We are the co-creators and co-hosts of Culture Goes Pop, the podcast. And since we have a monumentous occasion, we have also been joined by a couple of friends of ours. So we have with us Zach Grill, friend of Scott Wilson's. Hey, Zach, welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you?
Thanks for joining us. And we also have Alan Murphy, friend of Steve's, joining us on the show. Welcome, Alan.
Howdy, everyone. Welcome to the show.
And if you've listened to our episodes, Alan has joined us on a couple of special episodes where we talked about Aliens and the Terminator and Predator. And we talked about long-running franchise legacy shows. Alan added some great value to those when he joined us at those times. And so what I thought we would talk about today is just super fandom. Like, what are you a fan of? And, what have you been geeking on for a great period of time in your life? So since we have never really heard officially from Zach before, Zach, why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on who you are? I don't know if you want to tell people where you are in the world or not. And, the last four of your social and the PIN number to your ATM and things like that. But tell us a little bit about you and what you're into. What do you geek out on? Give us the short version first. We'll go around and then we'll get into longer discussions.
Yeah, so I'm from Ontario, Canada, small outside of Ottawa. I'm 36 years old now. I was born in 86. So my fandoms are 80s and on, although I do enjoy stuff before that. I worked at Blockbuster for many years, so my love for film grew through that avenue. And yeah, now I'm a dad now, so I don't get a whole lot of time to myself. And when I do, I try to enjoy the things that I like. So.
All right, cool. And Alan Murphy, remind us, for those who didn't hear you first time, a little bit about your backstory, where you are.
I've been on this planet since the very early 70s. I'm currently trapped somewhere in Texas. I think that's what they call it. And if they, horrible accent didn't already give it away. Once I got out of the deep, dark woods of South Central Texas and ran into science fiction, I've been a super fan of that, specifically sci-fi horror movies since.
Excellent. And Luis Reyes, when you talked about working at Blockbuster, he says, and how many late fees did you collect? back in the day,
I was always waiving the late fees. So
be kind.
I'm probably
and rewind,
the reason. I'm probably the reason we went out of business.
And what about you, Scott? Short backstory.
Short backstory. I was kind of born into fandom and geekdom. I mean, the first Christmas I can remember, my father provided me with a bunch of Star Wars toys I had never seen the first movie. I was born the same year the first movie came out. I also remember getting a Spider-Man toy. I think it was a vehicle for Spider-Man. It was like a Spider-Man mobile, if you will.
Spider-Mobile. Oh, look at that. Alan just showed his Millennium Falcon there. That's cool.
Is that Kenner?
Is that the original Kenner run, or is that the later Hasbro Repro?
No, it's the original.
He's got the original Kenner Millennium Falcon. That's a geek trophy right there.
I had the original Death Star. That's one of the things I got for that Christmas was the original Death Star.
The little foam trash compactor.
Right. with the little green, I forget, what's the creature called?
The garbage snake.
Yeah. Blanked on it. You had to ask a trivia question. Yeah. I'm not bad, I guess.
Yeah, and so I think the first thing that piqued my sci-fi imagination was probably being young enough and alive enough to see the first kind of rocket launches and moon landings. So I've been kind of a space cadet since I was a wee baby. And then, of course, as a kid, being a fan of like Tonka toys and dinosaur books and coloring books, and then getting things like the Super Friends and the Hanna-Barbera cartoon Saturday stuff, and then coloring books and comic books, and it's just it's kind of my gateway, and I'm just a major addict at this point. But yeah, all things sci-fi, geek, fantasy, DC, Marvel, I love it all. And that was kind of those conversations that Scott and I were having in the car when we were driving around, was what kind of led us to saying, hey, we like a lot of really nerdy stuff. We should probably talk about that doing a podcast and get 5 or 6 people a week to listen to us. And so far, we're exceeding those expectations. So
right, hopefully keep growing.
So yeah, I did, and we'll get into like what did you get new this week? How did you geek this week? But I do have now my new Black Panther T-shirt. I didn't have anything Wakanda or Black Panther before I saw the movie or did the show, but I'm now rocking the Black Panther wear. So that's my big claim to fame this week. So why don't we start with, well, Alan, you have a short amount of time where you have other things. So why don't we go with you, and why don't you pick a topic of something you are a super fan of, and tell us a little bit about that, Mr. Murphy, and we'll try not to interrupt you.
So I'm going to go with sci-fi horror because I started in science fiction as just being a super fan since 2001 and the original Star Wars New Hope run in 77. But shortly after that came Alien in 1979, and that blew me right out of my chair in the theater. And I've been hooked on that kind of thing. And then along came The Thing in 1982, which is another towering sci-fi horror movie.
John Carpenter.
So, I mean, even today, I have the stacks of the Alien movie and the Thing movies and the books and all those things around, and I run them fairly regularly, especially since we're close to Halloween. So I have to just run it over and over again. And while it doesn't have the horror impact anymore, it's still just, those are such quality movies that I can enjoy them over and over again and still get laughs at some of the jokes and everything.
You know, that reminds me of like when I was a kid, you only saw movies like The Sound of Music and The Wizard of Oz like once a year when they aired on TV, and that became like your tradition. Every year at this time we'd watch, The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown, and Wizard of Oz, and all these different things. And so now you have created your own tradition of watching these sci-fi horrors over and over again, which is awesome.
Which starts with Martian Invader Day on October 30th and the Mercury Radio Theater War of the Worlds broadcast, because that was played up by the newspapers to be a big panic. But I love the George Powell movie. And so Martian Invader Day has been my gateway into the holiday season, and it's a nice run up to Halloween. But yeah, sci-fi horror tends to dominate that particular pair of days more than any of the year. But yeah, I'll play The Thing or I'll play Alien. I think I have Alien on every media it's ever been released on, including those little tiny discs for the PlayStation Portable. And it's in my tablet. I have it everywhere. But The Thing would be the close second. So, super fanery. There we go.
And we did a whole episode on the kind of legacy of the Alien and the sequels and our thoughts on those and whatnot. And matter of fact, after we did that episode, just kind of listening to you kind of got me thinking about things again, because, part of it is like, unlike you, I'm not watching it religiously, so I have to rely on some faded memories. But I remember Alien 3 being kind of okay, but then I watched it again, and I did watch the preferred cut that you mentioned. And I'm like, yeah, no, this is pretty good. This is a decent Alien film. And even the fourth Aliens movie, I didn't hate it. It was okay on its own. So I kind of watched that whole run. I bought the the box set of the director's extended blah blah blah, and I watched them all again, and I've kind of reformed my opinions where I don't think there really was a bad Alien movie in the 4-movie run. Obviously, the first one being the best and my favorite, second one being that, and everything else, whatever. So yeah, and similar thing with the Terminator run when we talked about our favorite Terminators. I ended up watching all of them, and once again, I think the only one I wasn't terribly crazy about was Genesis. And even there, I'm like, if you just want to watch it as a movie, it's a halfway decent movie. And I'll just leave it at that, right? So
yeah, Terminator's kind of sci-fi horror too. That's definitely in the list. And
yeah, the original, especially the first Terminator, absolutely.
Oh yeah, unstoppable machines and all that fun stuff. 2001: A Space Odyssey has its horror element in the unstoppable computer that owns the ship, and this poor crew is just kind of beholden to it. And you can take it all the way back to the original sci-fi horror Frankenstein. Read that book the original version, read it sometime. It's amazing how much it influenced science fiction and horror ever since. So it's great. I mean, just once a year, I got to reread it.
There you go. All right. So how about Zach? Give us a little bit about what you are a super fan of.
Yeah, so my super fandom, the first one I can remember was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That was the ladies.
And this is, we're
grew
talking
up
about
on
the
the
first
cartoon.
run, right? Teenage Mutant
first run.
Ninja Turtles.
Bigfoot.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Right? Heroes in the
So
Action.
every day after school, I would watch that, you know. And then the live action film came out, and I was just obsessed. Teenage Mutant
How old were you
Turtles.
when that live action movie first came out when they're in their costumes?
4 years old.
Oh, really? Okay, so as
That
a
was-
4-year-old, you really can't judge that at all, right? Other than
So
this is cool.
I went
Turtle
through the
Woman.
whole hype, right? Like the Pizza Hut hype, the concert hype, everything Turtles. But this also led my love for martial arts films in general. So in the
Okay.
90s,
it was your
we had
gateway.
it was the way. So I had the Mighty Morphin Powers also. That was big for my childhood, which blended Mars plus kaiju genre. So those were 2 big things for me growing up. And then around 95, Chan started blowing up in North America with Rumble in the Bronx, and then he did Rush Hour. So
Right.
then it's just been steady, just martial arts genre for
What
me.
about the Bruce Lee stuff? Did you watch any of the Bruce Lee runs?
I watched those on TV Saturday afternoons. I remember as a kid,
Yeah.
I'd be watching whatever was on. You know, I grew up, I only had maybe 5 channels.
Right.
So I had to watch what was on. And I remember watching Lee films and old Shaw Brothers films. And so this all led up to just the martial
speaking
arts
my
genre
language.
in general.
Bruce Lee and Shaw Brothers.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Did you get into anime at all?
Not into too many animes other than Dragon Ball Z, but again, that's very, you know, martial arts heavy too.
Right. So
Cowboy Bebop, stuff like that.
My
Not
favorite
heavy
one,
into the
Cowboy
anime.
Bebop.
yeah, I think one of the first major anime, obviously what we didn't realize as a kid, but when we were watching Speed Racer, we were kind of watching anime and things like
Yeah.
Robotech and things like that. We were watching anime, and that's not even realizing what it was. But the
Yeah.
first like big anime feature I remember seeing was Akira, or depending on how you pronounce it, Akira. So different people pronounce it different ways. But that was one of the first ones, and then like Fist of the North Star was pretty cool too. You ever see that one where like punching a dude and they would
Yeah.
explode and stuff?
Looking at our
Yeah.
chat, Louis Reyes mentions The Crying Freeman, which is actually a really good one. That was a series of what they call OVA, original video animation. They did a live action movie with Mark Dacascos, which never got like a wide release, but if you knew where to get the bootleg from back in the late 90s, you saw it. But that's one of the ones I have the most vivid memories of just because of the visual.
Well, where I was going with that was one of my favorite video games was like the Street Fighter series from the 90s, and my favorite fighter was Ryu. And there was a full-length like anime style feature-length movie of like Super Street Fighter, which I thought was pretty cool too, and had a really pretty cool soundtrack and stuff too. Yeah, so I like martial arts. I loved martial arts as a kid, and what I really loved in the late 90s is how they were bringing a hybrid of like martial arts and action to American cinema. One of the first things that did it well was actually the Blade movie. So the original Blade with Wesley Snipes brought in the martial arts, the kind of techno music and the fighting and the special effects. And of course, The Matrix took it to a whole nother level. And if you look at a lot of the scenes in The Matrix, especially the first one where he's kind of doing the fights and he's like, rubbing his nose and doing the, come on, that's all nods to Bruce Lee moves and stuff like that. So those choreographers and the wire work and stuff they did. So yeah, I mean, I've been a fan of that too. And I love to see how it's being implemented into different forms of film, and when it's done well and not just used as a mechanic that's not serving the story. It's being abused.
So Zach, I see that you're about what? You said you're 35 now?
36, yeah.
36. So you're almost 10 years behind me. Just I'm 10 years behind Steve. So we kind of represent multiple generations of fandom here between the four of us. Give me an example. What was a moment? Because I can only imagine what you must have been feeling when you went to see that live action Ninja Turtles movie. I saw it when I was 13, and I was kind of bored by it, but I was 13 years old, so that's how I felt. But what moment from that film really captured your imagination?
I just loved it, like just everything about it. It was like the cartoon came to life, right? And I was young enough that was perfect for me.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't go into it looking for any of that. But as I grew up, by the time Turtles 3 came out, I was like, okay, Turtles 3 is garbage. The live action TV series.
Okay, hold on, wait a second.
Garbage.
Now, what about the He-Man and Masters of the Universe starring Dolph Lundgren? That's cinema excellence, right?
I love that movie. I remember I was at Cottage for a weekend, and we watched Masters of the Universe, and we were all drinking, and every time the troll character came on, we had to take a shot. And that troll character was in that whole movie, and we were so smashed.
You had like alcohol poisoning by the time the movie was over, right?
Oh, I was done in,
Did you ever get into?
And what wasn't it? Was it Courtney Cox in that?
I think so.
Yeah.
Did
She's
you ever
young
get into
Courtney
the original
Cox.
Zach, did you ever get into the original Eastman and Laird run, like with the original incarnation that was meant as like a parody of Frank Miller's Daredevil? Did you ever get into those? The original comics, the black and white.
So on in life, probably when I was a teenager, because when I grew up, I didn't have money to go buy comic books and stuff. I didn't get into comic books until probably the early 2000s. But I got into comic books, I got into it, and then I read all the back issues, got trade paperback, all that. And right now, the IDW series is pretty good. Like, I've been reading that since it started, and they just did the Last Ronin comic book.
I was going to ask you about that.
Where the one surviving bull in the future, and then that series was really good as well.
It was, I think Nickelodeon had done a series maybe 5 years ago that was a reimagining of the Ninja Turtles. And it was actually pretty good because my daughter, who's almost 14 now, was watching that when she was like maybe, 9 years old. And we got some of the toys from it and stuff. But I actually liked what they did with it. Of course, it went from 2D pen and ink to the 3D CGI stuff. But you know what I don't like, even though, I'll call them cartoons, but animated things are... The style is mostly aimed at a younger audience, but I like it when they don't baby everything down and they don't like super stylize everything to look like big doe-eyed bobbleheads, which some animation can do. So I really felt like that run of the Turtles was pretty good, and I remember watching it with the kids. And another one I used to love watching too with my oldest daughter was the Teen Titans run on Cartoon Network. And the theme song to that, Teen Titans, and all that. So there are certain ones that even as an adult, and if you're lucky, you never grow up, right? That inner child stays with you. But as you get older, if you can still enjoy modern things that you enjoyed when you were younger and enjoy them as an adult and don't feel like you're being talked down to or babied down to, it's really rewarding, I feel, especially if you can enjoy it with your kids. Like you say, you're a dad now. So to be able to share memories with your kids is great,
That's what I'm looking forward to. As she grows up, I'll be able to show her all the stuff that I love, what I grew up on, and hopefully she takes an interest to those things as well.
And don't be disappointed if they don't every time, but there's going to be stuff, and that will last for a long time. That's how it's worked out with my kids. Is they don't like everything I like, but they do like quite a bit of it. And if you don't push it hard, if you just make sure it's always around, then they'll pick up the stuff that they want to go with, and you end up having that to share. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how it played out with my son.
And make sure you play good music in the cars too, so you can give them musical culture. Like my kids were listening to Linkin Park and all kinds of stuff like that, Eminem, and so by the time they were old enough to know what music was, they already had been raised on the classics.
Right. You know, well, my son is like, he enjoys Star Wars. He's not the super fan I am, but he definitely enjoys it. And blasphemous as it may sound to some, his favorite Star Wars movie is Revenge of the Sith, more than the original trilogy, more than the sequel trilogy. That's the one that resonates with him since he's been a kid, and it hasn't changed. That's
Your
the one that resonates
kids
with him.
can surprise you like that. My son surprised me by coming in and becoming a very super fan of the 1960s Prisoner series. And
Wow.
he had just seen me watching one, and he was so fascinated by the psychology of it, he couldn't figure out all the things going on and how it was going back there, and it just hooked him. And I was like, well, okay, I would have never thought that he would get into something like that. But just because you're exposing them to it, there'll be those kind of light bulb moments where something you don't even expect becomes this really cool shared interest. Go for it. Just play what you like, and as much of it'll stick as possible.
Right. I mean, you can't force anything on your kids, but you can introduce them to certain things, and you hope that some of it resonates, some of it sticks, and some of it doesn't. Maybe it's not as much as you would like, but
Right. It's like you can't, well, I'm going to say you can't. Some parents do, but rather than forcing your kids to be religious, bring them to church a few times and let them decide if they want to go to church, right? It's kind of what my parents did. And then same thing, play some good classic movies, play some awesome music, let them know that this is there. Don't force them into it. And if they find out, yeah, this is for me, then yeah, that's a bonus, right? So, so what do you do now in your geekdom, Zach? What do you do? Like, what do you watch? What do you do? Like, what's your guilty pleasure or your recreational habits, if you will?
Right now, it's a lot of Blues Clues and Paw Patrol with the daughter every night. So, I got her a tablet for Christmas.
How old is your kid?
She's gonna be 2.5 in a couple
Okay,
months.
yeah. So you're not doing Barney and Caillou yet, I think.
No.
But
I got her a tablet for Christmas, and then I'll be able to get my TV back, and she can watch everything on the tablet.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm just...
Yeah. Hopefully you make your kids a priority, and your time with your kids you make a priority, because you'll never get that time back.
Just wait just wait
like the last couple years.
Yeah, just wait
you go, Scott.
Wait until the first time. Yeah, I do. Just wait until the first time when you are watching a movie with your kids, and then something happens in that movie that suddenly reminds you you're not supposed to be showing this to kids. That's happened to me quite a few times.
Yeah,
Airplane.
So one of the first movies I took my first daughter to was Finding Nemo, and she was, I don't remember exactly how old she was, but she was small enough where I actually pushed her in a stroller, and that movie theater wasn't terribly far from where we lived, so I literally strolled her to the movies there. It was kind of our just get out and do some stuff, and we saw it, and it was like and if you've seen Finding Nemo, it's very much like a father, it's a parent story, right, at its core, and so it was very poignant to watch it with my kid and everything. But when she's whatever it is, 5 years old, almost everything's going over her head, and before the movie's even over, she's out. She's just asleep. But it was just kind of cool that first movie we watched was that, and then I strolled her back home. She was probably sleeping when I strolled her home. But yeah, and she used to love to watch Toy Story. Like before she said Mama and Dada, she probably said Woody and Buzz, because we had Toy Story DVD on a constant loop all the time. Yeah, as a matter of fact, when the Hulk movie came out, the Ang Lee Hulk movie, she's little, she's watching it with me, and I'm worried about covering her eyes because there's a scene where the big mutant Hulk dogs are like chasing the woman down, and I'm like, cover your eyes. She goes, no, Daddy, those are doggies, and she just wanted to see the dogs while we're watching the Hulk movie. So you never know what they're going to tune into, So.
Well, yeah, I've had that experience too, where you kind of misjudge things. What you think is going to scare them, they actually end up liking, and then what you think they may like, that ends up terrifying them. So that's happened to me a million times. I tried to show, my son was about 4 or 5. For some reason, I tried to show him Gremlins. I don't know what I was thinking. We got to the point where when they first shows one of them eating that Christmas cookie on the counter, and my son was having no more of that. He was like, screamed and said, Daddy, please turn this off, turn it off, turn it off. So I was like, click. So yeah, that was that.
And what about you, Mr. Murphy? How do you spend your free time enjoying your geekdom? You got your computers all up, your retro systems. I see a
Yeah.
color computer with Dungeons and Dagerath running back there. Space
Yep.
Quest, is that on a Tandy 1000 or is that on the Coco as well?
The Coco 3 FPGA.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, retro computers. Well, they're not retro to me. I just had them and grew up with them, and that was the computer I had. And role playing games. So like that's what's next up is Cyberpunk. So that's a 80s role playing game about basically now is the future. So
Right.
yeah,
And for anybody listening later, when you're saying role playing games, we're talking about the pen and paper ones, not the ones on
tabletop,
the computer.
yes,
Tabletop role playing games, yeah.
yeah.
Which
Not
was
even
my gateway to wanting to get a home computer because I was playing Dungeons and Dragons, which was very much theater of the mind. You had somebody explaining to you where you were. You used your imagination. So when the text adventures came out on the home computer, to me that was like a one-player offline way to do a role-playing thing. Again, you're using your imagination, where I'm at, what I'm doing, and so that was perfect for my 12-year-old brain at that time.
Yeah, same here.
And I think that's a little bit of a lost art. I'm not sure how many people are into the imaginative style games because we have so much.
Quite a few these days. It's kind of surprising. It died out a bit in the 90s. Some diehards like Star Wars and the Vampire the Masquerade folks kept it going. And then come D&D 3 and New Blood owning all that content, it got a resurgence, and that's continuing on now. There's a whole lot of folks who are casual RPGers from time to time just because that you really in some places wouldn't expect. It's kind of nice because it was kind of a winter there for a long time.
Now, how was
the popularity of...
Go ahead, Zach. Sorry about that.
Do you think the popularity of Stranger Things is going to have a reach for tabletop games?
It already has. There's a tie-in version of D&D that goes with it that has the little Demogorgon characters and stuff. And it's kind of a starter intro set. So it's intended to be, you take this to your friends and you play a Stranger Things game as D&D, and you're in the Stranger Things setting and story. And it's a really well done starter set. And the whole book is done in the style of the game books within the story universe. So it's all like hand drawn in the same art and things like that. It's really cool. So yeah, and that there are a lot of people that have gotten in because of that tie-in. So there was a question.
I was going to say when you play with a group of people doing these now, is this all online and taken out for the most part?
Yeah, well, thanks COVID. I'm not a virtual tabletop type guy. I prefer to be in the room face to face, roll the dice, eat the snacks, have that social.
Yes.
But COVID killed that for a lot of folks. And as you get older, the folks that you game hard with in school, they move on. And sometimes they end up halfway across the country. So you do end up somehow making a peace with the virtual tabletop thing. And it's kind of a stream call like this.
Right.
But people are rolling dice and you use the chat to say, here's what the rolls are and things like that. So there's ways to do it. And there have become services like Roll20 or Fantasy Grounds or any of these kinds of things where that's the whole point of the site is to enable people to connect in game that distance would normally prevent that. So I'm not a huge fan of it. It does take some re-gearing, and it does, it's hard to teach an old DM new tricks sometimes. I'm used to just looking across the table and doing my, being able to read it. You don't get a lot of that. So you do have to adjust, but it gets there. So yeah, now mostly it's all virtual tabletop because that's easier for a lot of people to be able to adjust their schedules because you can dial in even if you couldn't have physically made it. So you do get more opportunity to play.
Now, do you have any? I'm taking you're usually the game master. You're running the show.
I've kind of, I guess, GM for life, whether I want it or not. I'd love to play sometime, and I remember playing since I think the last game I played was 2006. But yeah, it's mostly you GM, And it comes down to, somebody has to be such a super fan or nerd of the rules and the setting and wanting to put all that stuff together. And that's what it ends up. If you're a world builder type, you end up in the GM seat just talking about all the cool stuff you imagine and hoping that folks can use that to be fun for what they're doing.
Do you get as hardcore as wanting people to be in character while they play, and when they announce what they're doing, they need to announce it in character and all that kind of stuff?
No, I'm not a live action type person. There is a type of role play like that called live action role play.
Well, that's LARP. That's the whole cosplay and everything. But I've seen even the tabletop where some dungeon masters want you to.
Oh yeah, if you can do the voice, do the voice.
Yeah.
And there's times when I'll do a voice for a particular NPC. Because I have a certain way of speaking in a horrible accent anyway, so all of my voices come out sounding like me, and that's just not going to work with most of my NPCs. So I have to kind of just live with that. But if you're an actor type, do it. Play it if you want to play it that way. There's other people that are complete wallflowers, and they're just like, and you have to kind of draw them out, but you don't have to put the expectation. I've told people we're not doing Shakespeare tonight for a paying audience. We're having fun sharing a story. So let's just tell each other a story. And you can keep it to that, and then it's not a pressure thing.
Alan, let me ask you a question. I remember when I was a kid, role-playing games, I've never really been into them. But they used to have a certain stigma, I think, in the 70s and 80s.
Still do.
The stigma I'm talking about is real specific. It's I know
the Satanic Panic, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. That's what I was thinking of.
Mazes and Minotaurs, the Satanic Panic, Jack Chick's Dark Dungeons track. Those are legendary jokes for people who are fans of role-playing games and don't take that kind of conspiracy theory weirdness seriously. But it's real. Those things had real impacts, and I've had even other family members say, "Oh no, Dungeons and Dragons is about witchcraft and people are going to burn." And when you know better, you know better. But you can't convince people that your faith is theirs or vice versa if they're not willing to. Right. Well, so that stigma exists.
Just so you know, music makes people dance, and dancing can lead to pregnancy. So,
even though it says in the Bible that there is a time to dance, I saw that movie too. There's no one right answer for everybody. If tabletop or live action or board games or card games, dice games, if those things aren't for you, don't do them.
Right.
But for me, my parents, my uncle and my mom specifically introduced me to Dungeons and Dragons in the 70s. I rolled up my first character was a fighter, and because that was the easiest to play when you're. I think I was 7, and they made room for a kid at their grown-up table, and that was cool because we're all telling a story about this. And it's just stuck with me for life. And D&D, you research weird stuff, so you end up with lots of cool trivia that you would have otherwise had to pay to go to college to learn. And you get writing skills, presentation skills. There's a ton behind it. But some people don't care about any of that. They have a preconceived notion from some media idea. Or their pastor has told them, this leads to the devil. Okay, if you're willing to look at what it really is, you see that, no, when I open the spell book for D&D, I'm not going to be able to actually blast you with a fireball. We're pretending for storytelling. But it's a big world and room for lots of different opinions. But yeah, those stigmas exist, and we do have to work around them at conventions and things. You have what they call either a session 0 or a table intro, where you basically lay out the ground rules. What is off the table for people? What is forbidden? Where are the bounds that we shouldn't cross in this shared story? And if we start getting close, here's a mechanism where you can tap out and say, whoa, we're getting off into too much witchcraft. I don't want that because of my religion. Fine. We can play a modern game that has none of that. We can play a sci-fi future game with none of that. There's plenty of opportunity that doesn't get into those things. And yeah, obviously, I'm a super fan of role-playing games. I think that they're an amazing pastime.
Zach, here's a question for you again. One I just came up with. I know when I got into um, martial arts cinema because I was into it as a kid, and then I kind of forgot about it in my teen years. But then in my late teens, early 20s, I got back into it heavy. And there used to be a store in Manhattan called the 43rd Chamber, where they had old bootlegs. They had bootleg VHS of all the old Shaw Brothers, of all, Golden Harvest, all that stuff. And that time, that led me sort of a segue into like the John Woo stuff, what they call heroic bloodshed and that kind of thing. Did you ever get into that, or did you just stay within the martial arts?
No, I only got into like the John Woo and the Hong Kong action. So
Right.
Hard Boiled, The Killer, all
Yeah.
that, in the line
For
of
Better
duty,
Tomorrow. Yeah.
Better Tomorrow, all that. I'd put them in the same kind of genre, even though they're different. But
Right.
Hong Kong cinema in general.
For those who don't know, that's where the Matrix got a lot of its other tricks from, not just the martial arts, but just Hong Kong cinema in general, or just Asian pop culture in general. Just the Matrix
Same as-
took a lot
Same
from a lot
as
of different. Yes.
Tarantino with Kill Bill, and
Yeah.
you
Yes.
know, you get
Yeah.
Gordon Liu in Kill Bill, you get Sonny Chiba in Kill Bill.
Some of the wildest speaking movies you will ever see in your life. Shiva, I saw one with him recently called Pilgrim. And if you just want to have a wild time with a movie, I suggest that thing is like kind of a Japanese Dirty Harry, but just way crazier. I suggest anybody give that a look.
Shout
What,
Selectus came out with a Blu-ray box set of 7 Sonny Chiba movies. I have that in the mail right now, so it's not like Yakuza Wolf, and so I'm looking forward to getting into that when it comes in. And then next week I have Volume 2 coming in, so
Okay.
that will be.
I got Volume 1 last year for a birthday present, so
Yeah, it was a very, very well made set, Volume 1. So I'm looking forward to Volume 2. And
When I was a kid, Channel 26 Fox station in Houston on Saturday afternoon would run every cheap martial arts movie they could steal from somewhere east. And I saw like 5 Furious Fingers of Death and crazy stuff like that. Loved it. And that got me to things like Chuck Norris movies and Lone Wolf McQuade and The Octagon and all that weird 80s martial arts type American stuff. And yeah, I'm going to say it.
Right there.
Oh, yeah. All those crazy things. So, long before the kind of the origin became popular in the U.S., there were people making U.S.ified versions of that stuff. Bruce Lee and his impact was global. And there were all these splinters that came out of his movie making endeavors. And then now they've kind of joined all back up, where everybody has now been able to reach across the different waters and find each of those particular pools and go, yeah, but this is cool too. And, oh, I like what you're doing. And it all does blend back in. And it's great to see that now you've got that kind of almost a global view of that, where you get different kinds that keep it interesting enough. So, bring it on.
And it's important to say that, like what you're talking about now, the internet is what makes all of that possible, because,
Not streaming services.
The time that we're talking about, like, the 80s and the 90s, like, you didn't have that. You had to go seek this stuff out physically. If you weren't lucky enough to live in a big city like New York, LA, the Bay Area, or Houston, that stuff wasn't readily available everywhere. It was very hard to find. You had to actively look for it, physically look.
And you could only get little reflections that gave you the idea there was so much more out there, but you couldn't quite get your hands on it.
Right.
And then once you got online, getting the lists, woo.
Well, in '99, like that's when I had the internet at home, so I was downloading stuff off of Napster, LimeWire, Kung Fu movies that way, over dial-up. So it would take me 3 days to download one kung fu movie, but I'd have a
Wow.
blast
You
with
had
it.
it.
You know,
You
it'd
had
be
it.
worth it.
Yeah.
Hey, Rowdy just joined us. Hey, the drive-in movie on Fox on a Saturday afternoon, classic.
Oh yeah, it's what Rowdy is talking about is, like everywhere kind of had this, but in New York on Channel 5, there was a thing called the drive-in movie. They used this audio from, I think it was Greece. There was a part I think where they went to a drive-in movie and they used that audio as the intro every week for and they would just show Five Deadly Venoms, 36 Chambers of Shaolin, all the
Iron
classic.
Fist.
Like a samurai
Yeah.
theater is what it was called on some of the
Right.
B stations in South Florida. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Every area
Yeah,
had their own
yeah.
version.
like we had Creature Feature that showed old monster and sci-fi movies. We had Samurai Theater that would show some, martial arts style movies and things like that. Yeah. It was usually on a UHF channel. It wasn't on one of your three major networks like your ABC, NBC, CBS. It was on a UHF channel, local station, just providing content. You had to get that dial just in to get the picture least fuzziest possible to be able to watch that. Absolutely. Those were the
See,
good old days.
A lot of the movies we were growing up watching too, they were all cut and English dubbed.
Yeah.
But now these boutique labels in the last few years, like Criterion, Arrow, 88 Films, they're all releasing the uncut versions with proper English and better subtitles, and now it's just like rewatching these movies in a whole different way.
Right. Yeah, I do find watching the dub movies to be distracting just because the dialogue doesn't match the mouth and the voice doesn't seem to match the character either. So it just kind of takes you out of the whole thing. I'd almost rather hear it in the native language and read the subtitles and at least get the proper inflections in the performance and
you missed the mystery. There was a mystery because, I watched Gunhead, which is a Godzilla movie without Godzilla in it.
Yes.
And the version of Gunhead that originally got brought over from Japan had people that spoke English dialogue, and it had people who spoke in Japanese, and no subtitles or dubs. So all you had to work with was how much Japanese you knew or the English part. So for many years, and I had watched it enough to figure out what was going on, but at first you're lost. Akira, when it first came over, there was no dub or sub. Somebody went to Japan, went, oh my gosh, you should see this laser disc, and plugged it in. And you're like, what is going on? I don't know, but this is so cool. And in Houston, there was a group called Anime NASA, which I lucked into at one point. And they were going over and bringing over those laser discs and watching them at NASA for the fun of it on the big screen. And they turned out to be the guys who formed AD Vision later, which did a lot of anime import in the 90s and dub and sub. And they brought in voice actors to start making that transition. And I think they're gone now, but they did leave a bit of a legacy with bringing over some pretty amazing stuff that had never been seen in the U.S. and making it accessible. And now you see that happening with the martial arts movies too. What was the one? Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon was a huge example of that. It was a whole thing on its own. And then, because of the Matrix, Wire Fu is awesome. And now all of a sudden everyone knows that. Let's get some more. But wait, we're bringing it to America. Let's make it accessible to crazy Americans with short attention spans. Okay, let's do that. And we all win anyway. More. Bring it.
See, one show in recent years can I find get enough love? Yeah, so one show in recent years I feel doesn't get enough love is Warrior on Cinemax, HBO.
I saw the first
It's
episode.
the writings of Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
It's so
show.
good. Both seasons have been great. And I'm looking forward to the third season coming out next year. And another thing I'm looking forward to, they announced a Gamera anime for Netflix. So that should be
There was a
pretty cool.
trilogy of Gamera movies back in, I think, the 90s. That's very famous and very well respected. I can't remember what the name of the trilogy is, but it was like 3 films back to back.
I have the Arrow box sets of all the Gamera films, and the trilogy in the 90s is better than Godzilla movies in the 90s.
That's what I've heard. That's what I've heard.
Yes.
Oh,
We don't talk about that 90s Godzilla movie that was so bad, Toho had to say, well, we're going to bring Godzilla 2000 and show you how to do it again because you lost your way.
No.
You're talking about the Matthew Broderick breakout?
You said it. Yes. That's
That was life changing. Well, I was going to ask you guys what movie literally changed your life, and for me, it was that movie. It was Godzilla '97 with Matthew Broderick.
oh my god!
What did it change your life to?
Oh my god!
No, 2001: A Space Odyssey. That was my life-changing movie.
My bad. And the Planet of the Apes remake with Mark Wahlberg.
That was, I mean, honestly, it was halfway decent for what they did with it.
My life-changing
Incredible makeup effects.
And makeup and performance. Tim Roth in that video.
Well, Rick Baker did the makeup effects.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what my life-changing movie would be. I don't know if there's just one. I mean, I had so many when I was very small. Chief among them, Star Wars, Tron, and Superman. Those three, I think, were
all three good.
Yeah, life-changing movies for me.
Tron definitely. Tron, I wouldn't say it was life-changing for me because I already had a computer at that time, and that was kind of what the inside of my head already looked like. But 2001 was the first sci-fi movie I ever saw, and it was on a little black and white 13-inch TV, all fuzzy broadcast from Houston when I lived way down in South Texas, and it blew my mind. And the next summer, the original Star Wars came out, so I had no hope at that point. When the New Hope, I was lost. If
I had to pick one movie that was literally life-changing, it was the first Star Wars movie. Because before that, again, I mentioned as a kid, I had seen the moon landing and the rocket launches. I had watched Star Trek on television. I'd watched cartoons, but everything was confined to a 13 to 19-inch screen that may or may not have had color. And to see such a big, epic space fantasy at a drive-in movie theater on a larger-than-life screen, on a larger-than-life story, and being about 9 years old, and just being a literal lifelong space cadet for the first 9 years of my life. That movie spoke to me in a way that has resonated ever since. And unfortunately, it set the bar so high on what I expect a movie to be. I'm usually disappointed by most other movies because they're not Star Wars, So
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, well, nothing ever meets the expectations of what you're exposed to when you're very young. It's like everything is downhill, with a few rare exceptions, everything is downhill from that. You can't have that experience more than once. You can only have that experience once.
Right.
So, but yeah, for me, it's the holy quadrilogy would be Star Wars, Tron, Superman, and Raiders of the Lost Ark.
There we go. Yeah, and Tron spoke to me. It didn't change my life, but it almost validated my life at that time because it was everything that I was into. It was about video games, which I was into. It was about computer programming. I was programming, even though I was programming in BASIC on an 8-bit home computer. I was a video game player and a computer programmer, and then it took all that and it put you inside the computer where you were playing video games in real life for life and death situations. It was like, oh my God, can there be any more nerdgasmy in any single movie at this time? No, it just validated the uber nerd I was in 1981 or 2 whenever that movie came out. So,
and Blade Runner and Wrath of Khan, same year. I mean, 82 was a great year for science fiction. Definitely.
And one thing I'd like to mention, just this isn't something that I think really gets mentioned in the geek out conversations, but it's definitely something you can geek out to, but in a different way. Those are the blaxploitation films of the 70s. Because if you're into martial arts cinema, which really became a thing in the 70s with Bruce Lee and Enter the Dragon, if you've seen Shaft, if you've seen Foxy Brown, if you've seen Coffee, if you've seen Superfly, if you've seen The Mac, if you've seen Hitman, I could go all day long with these lists.
We need to do a marathon. We need to get a day. We need to just watch some of these.
The Jim Kelly blaxploitation movies.
Yes. Those were some of the first action films, period. They came along right when the martial arts craze happened, because Hollywood realized that Bruce Lee was very, very popular with black audiences in particular. So they began to incorporate that stuff. But those movies are just wild, and they're B movies, but at the same time, you'd be surprised how actually fun some of them are, and have the rewatch value, and even the influence that they have on later, the way that heroes were introduced. If you look at Shaft, the title sequence when he's just walking through Times Square is the best introduction for a hero you will probably
Yeah.
see in any movie, with the Isaac Hayes music in the background.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, you knew that this was larger than life 2 steps in.
Yes.
Oh, here we go. Yeah. Buckle up. It's about to be a ride.
Yeah, right. And you see the influence of that definitely in Blade, and that was actually something consciously that Wesley Snipes and a director by the name of Ernest Dickerson, who was Spike Lee's cameraman, who went on to direct episodes of The Wire. He directed Tupac's first movie, Juice. They developed that project. They said, we want this to sort of be like a superhero comic book version of Shaft.
Well, and that stuff inspired Tarantino too.
Yes, very, very much, very much.
I mean, look what we've gotten out of all of that. I mean, the legacy is amazing, and it's a very strong legacy. That's the weird part, is that you don't hear much about it, but it's a very strong current through so much stuff that came after. Oh, yeah.
It got absorbed into the tapestry, and also, speaking of Tarantino, I'm a big fan of his. I know that's kind of controversial to say in some circles, but my favorite movie of his happens to be his version of a blaxploitation movie, and that's Jackie Brown. And it's basically a love letter to Pam Grier, who was like the queen of blaxploitation. And it's just really an amazing movie. It's not just because she's in it, and not just because it's a tribute to a subgenre, but it's just an amazing movie on its own, and it really gives her the best showcase imaginable. But yeah, like Alan said,
always put Jackie Brown at top.
Yes,
everybody else, they're saying Pulp Fiction,
right?
Dogs. I've always said Jackie Brown.
Jackie Brown. That's.
You got me wanting to see it.
You're here. Yeah, I'm gonna go. Put me down for that one too. Yes.
I don't know if you see Roddy's comment over here. We're talking about Warrior is made by the creators of Banshee. That was also an HBO Cinemax show. Ask Scott about his feelings on Banshee. LOL.
He's saying that because on my old show, Scott's go, Alan, you don't want. Is there something you're trying to miss?
Just in case it's about to be an explosion, I'm getting ready.
Not an explosion. It's just Banshee. It's actually a pretty good show. I only saw the first season of it. We discussed it on my old show, Scott's Go, like 10 years ago. It must have been now. And there was just a whole period of this whole episode that took place in a prison with this character named the Albino, and it dealt with some very rough things that prison movies and shows usually deal with, and things that I don't tend to find all that pleasant to watch. Not just because I used to be a correctional officer, but Rowdy found that very amusing. He still finds that. He still finds that very amusing now. Honestly, that was a pretty good show. I didn't watch it to its completion, but I bought that first season on Blu-ray, and it was kind of a precursor to. That was around when the Raid movies came out, and I'm pretty sure Zach is familiar with the Raid films. I tried to bring Steve into the fold, didn't really work out all that well.
I couldn't. I tried watching it. I found it to be basically unwatchable.
Well, you've seen the Judge Dredd movie that came out around the same time.
Yes.
You've basically seen the Raid.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know why, but for a movie that had lots of violence and guns and action, you would think that you can't screw that up. And somehow, in my opinion, they just did, because including guns and violence and action, I still found the movie damn near impossible to watch. So I don't know why, I just could not get into it. And I like guns and violence and action.
Well, the Raid is
there a Steve's Plane version somewhere?
See, I think it might be because of the grittiness, maybe, of the first one. The lower budget.
When you say gritty, that's a polite word of saying underwhelming performances.
But if you watch the sequel.
Okay.
Alan, just to explain to you, Alan, about, was it 2011? It's an Indonesian film called The Raid. It's considered like one of the landmark action movies to come out like in the last 15 years or so. it's ultra violent. Like even for today's by today's standards, it's exceptionally violent. It's not suited for all tastes. And sometimes I forget that because I love it, so I show it to other people. But it's just if you see it, it's like Steve is right. Some of the acting is a little rough.
All of the acting. If we can call it acting.
That sounds like a movie watch party ready to happen
Yeah.
with marquee at the bottom.
But
Let's play dress up and get in front of a camera and try really hard to not be authentic.
but in terms of the action and the violence, it almost plays more like a horror film than it does an action movie. It's very intense. It all takes place in one location. The second film is more of a crime epic. The second film is more like The Godfather. But yeah, Banshee came out around that same time.
He's making it sound a hell of a lot better than it plays out on your television set. I can tell you that myself.
But yeah, Banshee came out around that
Listen
same
to his description of the movie and you won't be disappointed.
See, with the popularity of The Raid, we got other films after with some of the same actors, like The Night Comes for Us, stuff on Netflix. And
well, two of the actor that played Mad Dog in The Raid, or a couple of them, they were in Star Wars: The Force Awakens. They didn't do any martial arts, but they were in Star Wars: The Force just because they knew a lot of Star Wars fans probably knew about The Raid. But around that time, that was when the Netflix Daredevil came on that had some similar choreography to The Raid in terms of a lot of close quarters fighting in buildings and hallways.
Like
and
a long, continuous shoot type stuff.
Yeah. That sort of thing. So, but no, if you like that stuff, you'll probably like Banshee. If you're into that sort of thing. But again, that stuff is not everybody's into it. I'll put it that way. Not everybody's into it.
And every few years we get these like new that we think we're gonna be stars, but then they kind of fizzle out, right? So like after Jackie Chan, we had Jet Li. Jet Li was big for a long time. Then we had Tony Jaa. Tony Jaa kind of fizzled out. Had Donnie Yen, and then we got E025, I think his name.
But to be fair to Donnie Yen,
he's not doing a whole lot.
To be fair to Donnie Yen, though, Donnie Yen, he has a legacy that goes for decades. So, in America, he kind of fizzled out, but, and he's going to be in this new John Wick film, the fourth one.
And the Ip Man quadrilogy, I think there's 4 of them. They were all great. Like,
right.
And he's great in Rogue One. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. He was very good in Rogue One. I actually like that character a lot. So
he really does carry a whole.
He's the one who's the blind Jedi.
Yes.
Okay. As soon as you said that, I put 2 and 2 together.
But a lot of people are looking at this John Wick 4. A lot of people are looking forward to see. I have a lot of friends who are going to be hopping up and down angry if he loses a fight to Keanu Reeves in that film. I know a lot of guys are going to be mad. I have a friend who's also named Scott. He's going to be furious if that happens. So, but
Keanu Reeves is a respectable action fight star. I mean, the guy puts in the work.
Yeah.
And John Wick was the proof, but he had been doing it long before that.
Yeah, with all the Matrix stuff, he was a badass in all the Matrix films.
And that was with a broken neck.
Yeah, and let's not forget Johnny Mnemonic.
Yeah, we want room service.
Let's forget Johnny Mnemonic.
No. Awesome.
We were talking about dollar theaters, and I used to work at a dollar theater. I saw Johnny Mnemonic in a dollar theater on my day off because I used to work that night. And I remember making fun of the movie while I was watching the movie for the first time. It was that freaking bad.
That's free, Jack.
I was doing my own Mystery Science Theater on that movie in real time.
Keanu is interesting because Keanu he'll do like 5 really bad movies and he'll come up with something really great that reminds you how much you like him, and then
right.
5 more really bad movies, and
I think he finally got to the point where he was wise enough to be able to pick and choose what his projects versus just taking something for work.
Yeah. And
he just he elevated his stardom enough where he could choose his projects, but initially some of his stuff was it was what was the one, the Devil's Advocate or whatever, where
you gotta pay your dues.
Yeah,
with Al Pacino,
which was actually good.
Yeah,
it was good.
One thought about the martial arts genre, probably my last thought on it, is that and Zach probably knows this about the genre. Uh, with martial arts films, it's like you always feel like you've seen everything in them, and then that's right when another wave comes in and they do something else with the fight choreography that you've never seen before, or they,
Right.
or tell stories in a way that you've never seen. Like right now, the fight stunt choreography. I mean, some of the things that these guys can do, I don't see how they don't actually how they're not actually killing each other every time they make a movie, because some of the stuff is just I couldn't have imagined it when I was a kid. They're really doing some superhero.
And they do get hurt, and Jackie Chan was really great about showing that in the end credits.
Yeah.
Right, because he was famous for doing all of his own stunts.
And then in the end credits, you see how bad it went for him several times. And, and I thought that was a great way to say, yeah, don't do this and hurt yourself. No, this is supposed to be fantasy. And
Right.
And who spent their life preparing to do it.
And many actors have gotten broken ribs or bones or bruised or sprained. Like, what's his face? Rocky. Stallone, I think, got some broken ribs on Rocky 3, but he said, I want this to look real. Hit me. Don't pull your punches. And
he got a neck injury in the fourth one from Dolph Lundgren.
So I think wanting to get as authentic performance on camera as possible, because it is kind of hard, especially in like something like boxing. It's hard to stunt double that. A lot of things when you got somebody on a motorcycle and it's a wide shot and they're wearing a helmet, you can kind of get away with it. But when it's up close and it's hand-to-hand combat, it's really hard to stunt double that unless everything's from the neck down and you cut back and forth, which is, it's obvious that it's being cut at that point. Props to taking one for the team, but yeah.
And also, while we got Alan here, because
Alan is short on time, right? You got to go soon, Alan?
No, I'm good so far, yeah.
Okay, we're at the hour mark. So
okay, before we started recording, Alan had some, I would say, very choice thoughts on the upcoming Avatar sequels that I thought were kind of amusing, and our listeners may agree. Alan, if you'd be so kind.
Okay, so you want me to talk about Avatar? All right. So did we need Avatar? No. Was it a technical achievement? Yeah. Did it make my daughter cry when they burned the tree down? Spoiler alert. Yeah. Am I mad about that? Yeah. But really, Avatar was Dances with Wolves, the cartoon version, I think. And I'd already seen Dances with Wolves, the live action, so it kind of seemed to be going backwards. And then now we're going to have another, 20, 200, 500 of them? I don't know. Some amazingly large number of what? I mean, please do something new, because Avatar itself looks great. Less filling.
I have James Cameron on the line here. Yeah.
Good.
I'm sorry, Mr. Cameron, for everything that Alan's saying.
His thoughts are not the thoughts of Culture Goes Pop.
Yeah. Oh no, they are my own. You're welcome to run them.
No, I kind of thought the same thing when I saw the first Avatar. Yes, it is Dances with Wolves. Yes, it is Fish Out of Water. Yes, it is obvious that the guy who's supposed to infiltrate the indigenous thing is going to become enamored with them and join their cause. All of that was telegraphed very early on. But was it still a unique form of visual presentation style? Absolutely. This one got
the technical achievement is mind-blowing.
And this one started this is what started the renaissance of seeing movies in 3D. This movie
Ridley Scott got jealous and had to do his own in 3D to try to catch up. It was amazing.
But was there anything new storytelling wise? No, but it's really hard to come up with a new story. But what are we doing now? We have Avatar: The Next Generation underwater.
Didn't we do that with The Abyss? I mean, I thought he learned his lesson on underwater with Abyss and Titanic and stuff. But I mean, he's got a submarine. He can make the movie. That's great. What's the story going to be? And I didn't care about the characters anyway. I mean, really, I don't
care. This is a whole new generation. So
even less I care about. I can be wrong, and that's fine. I may watch it at some point, but I'm not going to go out of my way. And I don't want my opinion to influence anyone else. I don't like critics who haven't done it or haven't even seen it yet making an opinion. That's what I'm doing. I didn't make my own Avatar movie better, and I haven't seen the one that there is to be offered. So I can be completely wrong, and that's fine. But it's got a lot going against it because it's a sequel to something that was already done. And then there's going to be Avatar 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think IMDb has it up to 8 right now. Really? You haven't even figured out how to do the second one, and you've already laid out sequelitis from heck. This is to sell toys, and good luck for him. You know, I mean, that's the one thing that they didn't do that Lucas had done with Star Wars. That's all he had left was toys. So, you know, there's one piece that he's missed, and that's the toy sales. And maybe with Avatar, he can get that too, and he can close out his book of, I've achieved everything everyone else did. Great.
Oh, by the way, we should have started with permission to speak freely.
but this is Alan. You did not disappoint. Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to hear from you. I will say this, just to bookend what you're saying. I will say, or not, to piggyback rather, not bookend. There's one thing I'm interested in with this new Avatar movie, and that's this. Since I've been a kid, Cameron has constantly been in this position. I remember when T2 came out, and I remember watching CNN back in the spring of '91, and they were saying this is an R-rated action film that costs $100 million, the most expensive film ever. There's no way this is going to make that money back. And then it made the money back.
Yeah, then it blew it out of the water. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then Titanic, the same thing. I remember that was originally supposed to be in summer of '97. I remember going to a movie theater in the Bronx, and they had like the big cups that said Collide with Destiny. It got delayed until the winter. And then I remember people saying this thing was going to flop. The first weekend numbers came in, they said it was going to flop, and then it just held every
That's underestimating Cameron.
Yeah. And then same thing with Avatar. People thought it was going to be a flop. It was the most expensive thing ever. I'm curious to see if he's gonna do that again.
Can he do magic again? Certainly. I mean, this is James Cameron, and this guy has been driven to the things he's been driven to since day one. I mean, Terminator was a drive thing. That guy had nightmares, and he made a fortune out of them. All right. Aliens was, well, okay, I guess I could try that job. And I think I got something I can repurpose for that. I just scratch out that character name, put in Ripley. Okay. And then, well, everything I've ever learned about directing, I'm going to throw it in here. And I'm going to just blast it. And who knew who he was at that time? Terminator hadn't even come out yet. And he was already on Aliens. Really? Yeah, the guy can do some amazing directing. And he can do some amazing design and some amazing story. And those will be the things that if I see more avatars, that's what I'm going to pull out of it. Hey, look, this is a really good directorial technique. Oh, this is what, so there's master classes that are probably being written right now that will become parts of that movie. But overall, am I going to knock myself out to camp out in front of the theater for a week just to get the first best seat? No, I ain't going to do it. I'll stream it. I'll get it on disc. I'll enjoy it long. Cause I have Avatar on the shelf too. I don't watch it that often, but sometimes it's just time to. But, the guy can do it, and I don't doubt that if he really puts his passion to it, he will. Everything he's ever put his passion to before has turned out amazing despite the difficulties. Titanic was one of his life projects. If you go back to his very first interviews on camera, there's a little tiny model Titanic ship behind him on the desk. He was thinking about it before Terminator, as far as I can tell. So that when he gets that passion thing going, get out of the way. You don't know what you're going to get. But and it's going to be horrible. I mean, if you listen to what he went through with Aliens, it was a fight every single day to the point where they nearly just shut the movie down and walked away. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then look what you get. Just because the guy can do it. And I have no doubt that if he wants it, he can do that again. Do I consider it lightning striking again? Not really. Not my speed of movie. I saw Dances with Wolves. I don't like the very obvious morality tale and, hey, look, it's the Native Americans versus the army again. No. I mean, that's been done. So
my version of that would have been Fern Gully, the animated movie in the 90s. So
I think there were jokes about that when it came out. I think people were calling it like Fern
It's
Gully.
basically the same movie.
The original Fast and Furious was Point Break with cars.
Yes.
It's just the same thing. So it's just Johnny Utah, right? Yeah. I am an FBI agent.
And and good for you, James. If you do watch this, I love much of the stuff that you've done. And I know that you've been quoted of saying, I don't care if there was a star out of place in Titanic, I made my billion. Good for you, sir. Salute and thank you for the entertainment so far.
So long, and thanks for the fish.
I paid for my ticket so that I get to have an opinion.
Right.
You should try to become an extra for Avatar 3. Just to see
No.
if you could slip in there.
No. My uncle worked in movies for decades and recently retired. And the behind-the-scenes stuff that I've heard from the movie industry as part of that, I don't need to be anywhere near it. Thank you very much.
Oh, my cousin Eric Anderson, who just logged into the chat, says Avatar was Pocahontas starring the Smurfs for me.
Pocahontas starring the Smurfs. Okay.
Nailed it.
All right. To each their own. I watched it. I found it an entertaining movie to watch, but I also found it to be very predictable and very formula
Heavy-handed.
Whatever the word is, right? Formulaic, or
I'm the odd man out here because I remember this is gonna be crazy. I saw that in the movies 4 times when it came out. For me, the sensory
Loser.
the sensory input. I mean, it was
absolutely.
The 3D.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, the story.
Yeah, visually, cinematography-wise, it was a masterpiece.
The 3D done right. The world building of Pandora done right. Look at all those plants and animals and stuff. And he sat there and went, "This is what's in my head. Make more of that on the screen."
Right, and the whole symbiotic, organic relationship and interfacing between the indigenous with the plants and animals and everything. That was cool.
But it was also a weird experience because when it came out on Blu-ray and DVD, I bought, I think it was a 5-6 disc special edition. It's like basically everything you want about Avatar ever in life, like in this package. And I watched it on a home theater at my house, and it didn't have the same impact as when you're watching it. And I've never watched. That was maybe about 10 years ago. I've never watched.
The new Dune is like that. It deserves IMAX. And if you don't like the new Dune and you didn't see it on IMAX, that might be the problem.
Right.
Put it on IMAX and just buckle up.
Well, just so you know, that TV I have out in the living room, that's 3D. And I actually have a small collection of 3D movies. And my TV uses the glasses you get from the movie theater, so it's just the cheap glasses. But I actually think I have Avatar in 3D. It's probably in the attic at this point now, but when 3D was the flavor of the week, I was all eating up every 3D Blu-ray I could get.
One recent movie I was afraid of that happening to, but it didn't, thankfully, because I watched it on Blu-ray, Top Gun Maverick. Anybody who hasn't seen that movie, I mean, in terms of blockbuster filmmaking, that's the best aerial photography, dogfight photography, cinematography I have ever seen in anything ever. It's like Earthbound Star Wars. I don't know how they pulled it off. I don't know.
Well, there's going to be models, CG, and sauce.
And aerial photography too. I'm sure there's
actually,
real aerial photography.
Some of those shots are actually the actors in the cockpit as the planes are flying. I'm not sure the ratio. I'm not sure how much of it. But there are shots.
In trainer aircraft, you can do that. They did that in the first one too. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Put them there because it helps the actors if they're there.
Right.
The whole vacuum packed green screen cinema. That doesn't work well because you get very flat performances from the people by just not coloring them green. Okay. When you actually put a prop at them and give them something to work with, they respond. So, and I, thank you ADI for that because I hadn't really paid a lot of attention to that until the guys who do the aliens for the more recent movies said, we would rather do it in camera. And then you go back and John Carpenter and James Cameron and Ridley Scott, you hear them all say it, do it in camera. And that means you got to put the actor there in the thing for them to be able to act.
Yeah, definitely. Alan, I think me and you are probably on the same page in terms of I'm not necessarily that thrilled with the way James Cameron's career has gone.
Well, I'm sure he is. I hope he is. And for me, the stuff that really worked the best was either he was designing or it was when he was designing with Ron Cobb. So those I think are some of the most imaginative. That would be Aliens and The Abyss. All right, The Abyss is such a great piece of science fiction with an I could go to sleep ending. I don't care about the ending, but the acting is great and the design is amazing. You're just as much underwater as you would have ever been in space.
It's Close Encounters underwater, basically.
Yeah. And Close Encounters is another one of those snoozy movies that has an amazing effect at the end. Oh yeah, thank you, Douglas Trumbull. But Cameron, you have to like the action roller coaster movie to start with, and when he gets out of that, it starts to get hit or miss a little. But it's always going to be well crafted. I can't think of any scene I've seen James Cameron do on a screen that isn't well crafted. Whatever the hassle was to get it there, he's got the eye, just like Ridley Scott and David Fincher and those guys. He's got the eye, no question. But is it really in his wheelhouse or not? And sometimes that's more pass than go. Well, okay, But when he's really cooking with a team that's able to step up to his level of vision and creativity and drive, then you just hang on. And Aliens was really the first. Well, no, let me back up. Terminator was really that. Stan Winston could keep up, and Ron Cobb was able to keep up later. So yeah, when they can keep up, yeah, it's going to be great. So and maybe if he gets the team around him that isn't just yes men, because he is who he is. If he gets people to go, no, please rewrite that because it sounds stupid. As a fan, I think that's horrible. Please don't. And he listens to that, then great. That's where Lucas went wrong with the prequel trilogy. Is he just, this is the word. You will follow the word. And there wasn't anyone around him, and you see it in the interviews. Even the producers paying for the movies. Oh, whatever you want, George, whatever you want. And that's not how creativity really works well. There has to be some conflict. There has to be some pain. There has to be some anger that gets you that blood boiling enough to push past whatever the obstacles are and still go for what you want. And if they can do that for Avatar, more power to them. I'd love to see it personally. Bring something that really pushes hard rather than, I directed this from my couch with 73 screens in 3D and everybody brought me coffee and told me that everything I was doing was awesome. Yeah, that movie, I'm going to sleep before the end of it. We've already seen that.
All right. Well, did he answer your question?
Yes, he did. and quite a few that I didn't ask. Yeah.
Don't get Alan started. No, that's awesome, though. But it's good to have some.
Oh, I thought that's why I got the link.
That's right. Being a super fan means being super passionate about things, and sometimes passion for things can run hot and cold. Yes, passion runs hot and cold.
He even managed to throw shade at George Lucas in there. So let's hear the George Lucas fan.
My phone is blowing up right now. Okay,
paid that guy for toys and movies and books and movies and books. And I can have an opinion. I paid for the ticket.
Right. No, I agree.
I got my share.
I agree. Honestly, all jokes aside, I really agree with that sentiment. Because I've had people, even in some of my reviews, people were telling me, well, you've never made a movie before. How do you know what you're talking about? Look, I pay to see these things. Not only do I pay to see these things, but these things don't get made unless Hollywood thinks that you will pay for them. That's the whole point. A lot of these things don't exist for the sake of art or posterity. They exist for commerce. The reason that Marvel is this big powerhouse now is not because Disney said, hey, superhero comics are an amazing art form. Let's spend a bunch of money paying tribute to that art form by adapting these comics. No, they were short on young boys in terms of the marketplace. They didn't know how to appeal to young boys, so they bought Star Wars, they bought Marvel, and they decided to mass produce movies and television shows out. And I have no problem with that. But yeah, if I pay for these things, I'm going to say what I think.
Yeah, well, they had Disney princesses, and now they've got Disney princess xenomorphs.
Before you have to go, Scott. I mean, not Scott, but Alan, and I'm not sure when that is. Scott, you had something you wanted to show off that I think we're going to do something real quick here because we're going to get to the show and tell round of the program, and let's let Scott Wilson show something off that he thinks that Alan will be of interest in.
This is an Alan. If you could help me with the name. Oh yeah, the M418 Pulse rifle.
Make sure you get it on camera there.
Aliens. This is the version that I think Hasbro and Nerf teamed up to make. The color scheme is way different than it is in the movies.
Okay, and Alan has got his up too. So let's let me change that a little bit here. Let's go over.
You'll be able to see this if you're watching this on Facebook. Not so much if you're listening to it in podcast form afterward.
So here's Alan's version of that gun. So Alan has the same gun. Yeah. So it's got a little bit of everything. It's got the thing on the bottom where you can slap in the cartridge. Oh,
it's got the counter here.
Yeah. Oh, that is too much.
Yeah, but
pre-ordered. Had to.
But it's pretty cool.
My guys at work, it's coming. Yeah.
Right.
It's coming for you.
And, again, you guys won't be able to see this so much because I don't want to do anything to Steve's screen over here, so I'll just
fire it against the wall there. Holy crap! That thing fired. It
has the sound and the accelerator. And Scott, what you want to do is take out the little weak battery that's in it. There are plans for how you change that out for LiPo batteries that'll really give it some kick.
Okay. All right.
And there you go. Upgrades. It's got some upgrades.
And now I'm going to have to find all my darts.
Yeah, right.
I know.
Boys in their toys. So I also have one thing to show real quick. And this actually, my wife picked it up, but we both are a fan of this. But my wife collects shot glasses, and when we were at Walmart the other day, she ended up finding an Assassin's Creed logo shot glass. And since we both are fans of the Assassin's Creed games and we play them, I thought that was kind of cool just to get a generic clear shot glass with that kind of Assassin's Creed logo on it.
Do you really feel safe drinking from a shot glass labeled Assassins?
Well, luckily she just collects them and we don't drink out of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
keep it safe. Keep it on the shelf.
Yeah. So that was my acquisition for the week, my geek pickup. Not that and my Black Panther shirt that I got after I saw the movie. Zach, I'm sorry. Zach, have you seen Black Panther yet? Wakanda Forever.
I have not, no.
Okay. Have you seen Black Adam?
I have not yet.
Okay. So
being a father.
I'm okay with spoilers.
Okay.
I'm not.
Well, because last night we've already spoken. We've already talked about those, but I was just curious if you had seen either one. Did you have any thoughts on your thoughts on the movie after seeing it? But when that time comes, feel free if you want to join us again to give us your 2 cents on that. Matter of fact, my big achievement this week when I did play Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which is the one I'm playing now, the Viking one, I was able to get enough opals to buy from the trader. I got a celestial unicorn skin from my mount, so I've got the gayest horse that you can ride in a video game now. It's the kind of 3D, purple, sparkly, and it leaves little trails of sparkle dust behind it when you run. So it's
this is Deckard's unicorn. Is that what I'm hearing?
Is it what now?
Deckard's unicorn.
Deckard's unicorn. Yeah, maybe. But it's kind of cool because the whole body is like hollow and 3D looking. But you know how they do the celestial designs where it's like the stars and they connect the dots with the stars? So you can see inside the body the celestial bright dots with the little connecting lines. So it looks like a 3-dimensional model of a horse with a glowing purple horse skin wrapped around that. So it's actually kind of cool. But the fact that it's a purple unicorn with stardust does kind of lower the man scale on it, just a shade or two.
He admits he's a brony on air.
Sure.
Sparkle Princess, what is it?
Well, yeah, it's a celestial unicorn skin for your man.
Okay.
And it took 150 opals to buy him from the trader. So a lot of resource gathering was required to get that proud purchase.
Well, friendship is magic, Stevie.
Are any of you guys a fan of the Fallout series?
I'm not that. I have the games on Steam and on the Xbox. I haven't really played them, but I know there's a Netflix series coming out, right?
I think Amazon.
Or Amazon. Somebody's coming out with a live action series on it.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking forward to that series.
Yeah, I haven't really played it that much. I know it's from Bethesda, who makes Skyrim, and I'm a pretty big fan of Skyrim. I know it's dealing with kind of like a post-apocalyptic time frame, and kind of after the nuke and how you deal with things, which I think is a really cool genre.
A very sarcastic sense of humor running underneath it.
Okay.
It's amazing.
There was a series about 15 years ago called Jericho. And it was about the 23 major cities got nuked and the math of people trying to survive. It was very Fallout style, but in the early days.
So, tabletop role-playing news. Modifius, the company, has released a really well-done Fallout tabletop RPG with lots of really fun add-ons to it. And there is an outfit from Europe called Free League that has a game that goes back to the 80s called Mutant Year Zero that works very well with Fallout stuff. So, get your how do you rebuild Mad Max after the nuke, viruses, spacecraft falling on Earth, and robots going wild, and all these other things. And you're hungry. Go find some food. Get the grub.
Good times. I'll tell you what, my current streaming binge stuff that my wife and I are watching is now the rebooted Battlestar Galactica that Sci-Fi Network came out with around 2005-ish.
Yes.
I guess since I bought the box set and I watched the original run, because I'd never seen the whole thing as a kid. So I finished watching the whole original run. I think it was 24 episodes. So I binged that over a couple of weeks. Now we're watching a couple episodes a night of I'll call it the new one. It's now 15 years old or so, but it's actually halfway decent. I'm surprised. I wasn't sure I was going to like it. There's a few things I can nitpick, but I think it's good.
Check in with Stevie after the last episode
of season 1.
No, of the new Battlestar Galactica you're talking about.
Yeah.
So there's there. Just put a pin in the calendar for when you finish that. You need to come back to it on the show.
Okay. When I finish the entire run.
Yes.
Okay.
After you've seen the last episode of the last season. No spoilers.
Okay. Well,
hang on, belt in. You're not guessing how it's going. You're wrong. Whatever you guess, pretty much the entire time. Wait till you get to the end, and then put a pin in. Let's talk about it then.
Okay. So again, I'm only on season 1. So I'll tell you some of the things that bugged me. It bugged me that the Cylon Raider had the face of the Cylon. I just thought that was the most ridiculous.
Oh, the new Cylon Raiders.
Yeah, the new Cylon Raiders basically looks like the face of the old Cylon with some.
But you haven't found out why yet. That's fine.
I've seen it in season 1 already, where Starbucks shot one down, and it's like organic inside, and so it's a hybrid of AI and
that would be why
based life form. But they didn't have to make the face look like the helmet of the original Cylon. It could have looked like anything. The grill of that spaceship literally could have looked like anything. So the fact they gave it a face, I find distracting. Anyways, that's just me. But no, I like it. The whole, Cylons look like people is a unique twist. The blonde chick, number 6, who's like the seducing queen, I find her shtick to be a little old at this point, because she just keeps doing the whole thing where I'm sexy and I'm going to seduce you. Is that James Cameron calling you right now?
No, it's Lonnie from Zoic. He would like to talk to you about the design of the Raider.
But we're watching it and I'm enjoying it. I like that they've done a few things. They've changed a few things. They've done a few gender swaps. They've added in, the fact that Cylons don't now look like people, and people don't even know what they're Cylons. So that's a unique twist. I'm enjoying the ride so far. I think the series,
Edward Olmos,
he's great in it.
Not only is he great, after you see the last episode, I'm going to tell you something that he said related to it that is going to blow your mind right out the back of your skull. It is so awesome.
Okay.
You're going to sit down and go to the fridge and go, okay, I'm going to be chewing on this for weeks.
Right.
Yeah.
And another thing that I like, because even I didn't realize when I watched the first run, but there was a huge religious undertone to it. The Lords of Kobol and the tribe of the 13 colonies, and where humanity started and where humanity went to, and kind of all this kind of religious thread, and they've kept that religious undertone to it as well. And it's really hard to bring religion into mainstream, especially sci-fi, without it feeling like you're beating somebody over the head. So you almost have to kind of like with the Force. You know, the Force was just a distilled version of good versus evil. So it is religious. They are talking about the gods and God, but they're, but it doesn't feel like you're being preached to or being beat over the head with the space Bible. So I feel it's a really good mix of that's like the original series had a good level of humanity to it. It was a very human-based stories taking place in outer space. So I feel this is a really good balance. I'm enjoying the ride. I know I'm like 15 years late to the party, like a lot of things, but
that's why they put them on disc, is so that you can come you don't have to wait till it broadcasts on TV at 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever.
It's good television. So if anybody hasn't seen it, I would, and you don't have to have seen the original series to enjoy watching this. But if you've seen them both, it's nice to draw some of the parallels and contrasts. But yeah, we're going on an hour and a half now. This has been a great. So this is a new show we started with. This is episode 25. We're talking about random things that are hopefully of interest to random people out there, and hopefully people who are watching this live or will listen to it later will enjoy these conversations we had. I've enjoyed the time Scott and I have spent together working on this show. I feel like we got a long way to go on coming up with a bigger and better show as time goes on, as we have more time to devote to it. Zach, thanks for being a friend of Scott's and watching our show and being there for us. And thanks for joining us.
Definitely.
You're welcome to come back again when you feel like it, especially if you got something in particular you want to talk about. Same to you, Mr. Murphy. Anytime you guys want to come back. I don't know what else we need to say that we haven't said, because we could sit here and do this for hours, but I think an hour and a half is probably good enough.
Right.
But I'm happy that we reached this milestone. We reached 25 episodes, and I'm looking forward to the next 25. And every day is the next day in life, right? So I'm
glad you guys are doing it too. It's nice to see Scott, and you together every week.
Yeah.
And I've had Scott on my Facebook for probably 8 years now, maybe. We have a lot of same interests, so whenever he reviews something, I take that in, and I'm like, okay, I'll probably like it. Sometimes I don't agree, but
no, it's true.
If you agree with me all the time, something's wrong.
Right. And so Al and I have had these conversations too, like behind the scenes, just talking about, because Al and I are on a different show that we do that's about a vintage computer. But him and I will get to talking about things that has nothing to do with that computer. And his discussions about his passion for the Alien franchise is what prompted me to want to do that on the show, because I'm like, this is a topic we really need to delve into, and the other show is not the right show for it. So that was a topic we'd already chewed on a few times. His history and fandom in there and his vast knowledge of that was great. And I feel that those episodes where we talked about the Terminator franchise and the Predator franchise and the other one, the Aliens franchise, I think those were good. Those were good shows. Those ones we'd never streamed live, so you're going to have to listen to the podcast to hear them. But those were great content. Thanks for doing that, Mr. Murphy. And is anybody watching Andor right now?
I am.
I just finished it.
Okay. Is it done? Because I think I got to episode 10. How many episodes are there going to be?
I think it was the lead this week.
It's hard to tell. Honestly,
because they leave on. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I'm not sure how many episodes are going to be on this season, because usually these miniseries they run in like 8 episodes, but we're already on 10, and 10 didn't feel like a finale. It still feels like there's going to be one more thing, because it's like right now things are set up. They're setting up the funeral.
11 episodes, so there's still one more episode.
All right, so it feels like they got the funeral. They're trying to set the trap to catch Cass. And I think that's going to be the finale. And I'm already hearing that there's going to be a season 2.
Yeah, this is one of the. I keep saying it on my Facebook, and I will continue to say it. If you have complained about anything bearing the Star Wars name over the past 45 years, but you are not currently singing the praises of this show as loud as you can, you have no right to complain about anything Star Wars ever again, because this is one of the single best things to ever bear the Star Wars name.
Absolutely.
Between this and The Mandalorian, personally, I think the balance between those two shows there's no reason for you to ever complain about the sequels or the prequels ever. You don't need to think about it. With Andor and the Mandalorian, you don't need to think about what you don't like in Star Wars.
There's enough. Now the good outweighs the bad.
Yes.
Rogue One fixed the prequels with five.
Yeah, Rogue One. Yeah, and so basically, Andor is the backstory to Rogue One. It's the forming of the rebellion. It's the story of the forming of the rebellion, and it's really good. It's very espionage based. There's no Darth Vader. There's no Jedis. There's no Force.
It's also dare I say, it's sort of also like the crime show that Boba Fett pretended to be. It's kind of Andor is actually it's a real crime show. These characters, even some of the ones who are supposedly on the quote unquote right side, do some really terrible things at times.
Yeah, Rogue One brought that out about the rebellion. Yeah. Some fans hated it. I thought that was exactly what needed to be, because there had to be some skullduggery against such an overwhelming opponent. You're gonna cut some corners. You're gonna have to bite back some
sacrifices need to be made for the greater good, because it's literally the struggle against good versus evil on a global, interplanetary scale, intergalactic scale.
And when they volunteer for the shuttle ride, he says it, and it lampshades that whole thing is, we've done bad things in a good cause.
Yeah, and that's war. War is hell, right? Mm-hmm. So, cool. All right, well, let's put a fork in this, and let's wrap up this roundtable. But I want to thank our special guests, Zach G. and Alan Murphy, for joining us, and Scott Wilson for being my partner in crime on this endeavor of insanity that we're going on here, just talking about random crazy stuff. Grown men talking like we're freaking kids, excited about stuff.
Playing with toys and everything.
Playing with toys. Yes. Yes, be afraid. Be very afraid. So
toys, get the toys.
So
at least you guys are armed when James Cameron kicks in the door.
Yes. I know my phone has not stopped blowing up. I got Lucas and Cameron
shooting at him with this rifle. I mean, really? Didn't you come up with this, dude? Here, have him back.
You know, it's so funny. Like I did at the beginning of the year, I did a trade show, and it was a superhero themed trade show. So you could like decorate your tables, whatever. And there was stuff in the contract you had to sign. It's like, if you are going to bring a weapon, make sure it very clearly looks like a toy weapon and not a real weapon, because you're going into like a civic center, you're going through security, and you don't want to bring in like this Tommy gun that looks like a real gun, because a lot of these toy guns look like, this thing is badass, but at least it's got a few colors to the plastic where it's not going to flag security right away. So.
Yeah, Scott, have you thought about repainting yours the right colors?
I actually have, and
I knew it.
The funny thing is, when he comes walking in my front door, he's got a cardboard box that's like 8 feet wide. I'm like, what the hell is this guy bringing into my house?
I should have figured that Alan already had one. I don't know why.
Where's the box? Can you hold up the box and show up? This freaking box is insane, the size of this damn thing. So, and I'm just like looking at Scott thinking, what the hell? Yeah, it is a huge box.
Yep.
And that's what he's bringing into my house. And Scott's a big guy, so this thing is nearly as big as Scott is. Well, not quite. Scott's like 9 foot tall. So, but yeah, it is. It's insane. So cool. So we're gonna wrap it up. I do have a really cool little outro thing. So we'll just play our little outro thing. We can talk over it, and then we're gonna say goodbye. So. That's not the one. That's not the one, because I can't talk over that one. See, this is me not even knowing how to do the thing I'm supposed to do, so I need to bring this in.
One button to the left, Stevie.
Oh, well, Scott's down there putting his stuff away. So what was that, Alan?
One button to the left.
Yeah, or something like that. Right. So here we go. This is it. All right. So this concludes another episode of Culture Goes Pop Podcast, episode 25, Superfan Roundtable with special guests Zach G and Alan Murphy, hosted by Scott Wilson
and
Steve Strobridge, and thank you all for listening and joining us. Catch us wherever you get podcasts. We are on Apple Podcasts and Amazon and iHeartRadio and Anchor FM and Spotify and all those other places. And check us out on the web, culturegoespop.com. Send feedback and show suggestions to show@culturegoespop.com. And thank you. You are too kind. And thank you. All right. So there you go. There's the jam. That's the jam I threw together for this show. A friend of mine's actually working on an official theme song, which we don't have yet. So that's my makeshift theme. All right, we're going to press a button and say goodbye, everybody. Thanks again for being here. Thanks, everybody, for watching and listening. You'll be able to hear this probably Monday or Tuesday in the podcast. Make sure you subscribe to that podcast, hit follow, and rate and review the podcast, all the good stuff. Say goodbye, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
All that good stuff. Bye-bye now.